In this lesson, which is one of the Getting Yourself Trading Mindset Fit lessons, I'm going to talk about using vulnerability to improve your trading results. And this is what triggers the emotional brain to fight flight, the exposure to vulnerability, which is when risk and uncertainty meet. Now, it is in fact the vulnerability caused by lack of outcome control that triggers that fight flight. So let's have a think about that. You put a trade on, you are taking risk with real money, and you're exposing yourself to an uncertain outcome. Risk plus uncertainty equal vulnerability. And to your brain, vulnerability is a threat to its survival. So it automatically triggers the emotional brain to fight flight. Now let's have a think about this a little bit more. The emotional brain finds a short-term solution for self-preservation and locks it in as a pattern. Now, this is what happens through evolution and through our lived experience. It then begins looking for the threat of this situation to the exclusion of other explanations. This is really, really important. When you're trading and that vulnerability is triggered, which is perceived as a threat by your brain, it very rapidly creeps back through past patterns or anything that is similar to that threat of this situation to the exclusion of all other explanations that your rational brain may come up with later. And under stress, your rational reasoning brain gets hijacked and you make decisions based on survival, the moving away from threat and pain and towards certainty. That's what a hijacking does. So the vulnerability of not being in control of uncertainty has to be addressed in order to alter your frame of perception. Fear and uncertainty are very closely linked. The emotions of fight flight must first be managed before changing the meaning of vulnerability from threat to curiosity. Now that line right there is at the crux of the learning, the opportunity. You must change the meaning of vulnerability from threat to curiosity. It's not the avoidance of vulnerability that we are seeking. If you've heard that anywhere, that is incorrect. What we are looking for is to change the meaning of vulnerability away from threat and towards curiosity. This is what it looks like in a simple visual. An external event activates uncertainty. Now, this can happen 100 times during a normal day of your life. In trading, it is putting a trade on, right? That is an event activating uncertainty. And then during the trade, there are many things that can happen to further activate uncertainty. Then vulnerability comes to the surface. It triggers vulnerability. That is how it is perceived by your brain. And there are two. The screen is what historically, biologically, and traditionally the brain would always. It sees vulnerability as a threat to survival, triggers fight flight, which says, let's attack this threat to neutralize, or let's get the heck out of here to get away from this threat. That is what happens. However, with the trained mind, we can teach ourselves when vulnerability is exposed to trigger to disciplined curiosity, where we approach the threat with curiosity. Approach motivation gets triggered rather than fight flight activation getting triggered. This is the key learning from this lesson. So to summarize this learning, your methodology is driven by the performance of your psychology under pressure. So your methodology is the vehicle, the engine. Your psychology is the driver behind the wheel operating all of those things. And all top performers work on their head game as well as their method. In fact, I would argue that the more successful they become, the more they work on their head game. And until you solve this problem with your trading plan is incomplete. And to quote the recently retired, brilliant tennis player, Roger Federer, under pressure, I can see things very clearly. That is because he spent thousands of hours training his mind, his brain, his head to see threat under pressure as something to be approached with curiosity so that he could perform in the moment without worrying about the past future, which is what the brain would normally do. So my question to you traders, are you willing to be a top performing trader? If you are, this is the path to go. If you're not, do well. Remember, knowledge is never enough. We must train the brain into approach with curiosity. Thank you for listening.